So today I want to break down something that I believe is one of the most powerful patterns in all of human history. And once you truly understand this pattern, everything unfolding right now in the Middle East starts to make complete sense. The pattern is simple but incredibly consistent. Every major empire that has attempted to conquer Iran, historically Persia, has either collapsed, been forced to retreat, or emerged permanently weakened. Every single one, no exceptions. And today I want to explain using structural history and game theory why the United States may now be following that exact same path. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Let's go back and actually examine history closely, because history doesn't repeat itself exactly, but as Mark Twain famously said, it rhymes. And when it comes to Iran, those rhymes are extremely loud. First, let's talk about Alexander the Great. Everyone knows Alexander. He conquered Egypt. He swept through Mesopotamia, and he defeated Persia, what we now call Iran. So at first glance, it looks like a clear victory. But what happened after that victory? Alexander died at just 32 years old. His empire didn't stabilize. It didn't last. It collapsed almost immediately. His generals turned on each other, and the entire Macedonian system fell apart. And who eventually rose in that region? Iranian powers, the Parthians, who went on to dominate the Middle East for centuries. So the lesson is very clear. You might defeat Iran temporarily, but in the long run, Iran outlasts you. Second, let's look at the Roman Empire. Rome was the most powerful military force of the ancient world, unmatched in its time. And yet, Rome fought Iranian empires, particularly the Parthians, for over 300 years. Julius Caesar planned to invade Persia, but never got the chance. Crassus invaded and was crushed at the Battle of Carrhae, one of Rome's worst defeats. Trajan advanced deep into Persian territory, but couldn't hold it. Julian launched another invasion and died during the campaign. 3 centuries of conflict. And what was the result? Rome collapsed. Iran, under the Sassanid Empire, endured. Third, the Arab Caliphate. Many people assume this was a permanent conquest of Iran, but the reality is more complex. Yes, Arab forces conquered Persia in the 7th century, but over time, Iran absorbed its conquerors culturally and intellectually. Persian identity didn't disappear. It reshaped the Islamic world itself. Persian language, philosophy, art, and governance all re-emerged and dominated. Within a few centuries, Iranian dynasties were ruling again. So once again, Iran was not erased. It adapted and reasserted itself. Fourth, the Mongols, perhaps the most destructive military force in history. They wiped out entire cities, destroyed Baghdad, and killed millions. They also conquered Iran. But even here, the same pattern repeats. The Mongols didn't remain outsiders forever. They converted. They adopted Persian culture and eventually became part of the civilization they had conquered. Iran absorbed them too. Fifth, the Soviet Union. In the 20th century, a modern superpower occupied parts of Iran during both World War I and World War II. And yet, even the Soviets could not maintain control. In 1946, Stalin refused to withdraw troops, triggering an early Cold War crisis, but ultimately, the Soviet Union was forced to leave. A nuclear superpower could not hold Iran. So this is the pattern, and I want to make this very clear. Iran is not just another country. It is a civilizational entity with over 3,000 years of continuous history. And throughout that history, every empire that tried to dominate it failed in the long run. The empires faded. Iran remained. Now let's go deeper. Let's use game theory and structural analysis to understand why this keeps happening. There are concrete reasons behind this pattern. First, strategic depth. Iran is geographically vast, about 4 times the size of Iraq, with a population approaching 90 million. It has mountains like the Zagros and Alborz ranges, vast deserts, and incredibly difficult terrain. This makes military occupation extremely costly. Any invasion would require millions of troops to control effectively. The United States simply does not have that capacity. The math doesn't work. Second, what I call the inverted military pyramid. In traditional warfare, the base of power is cheap, flexible infantry. Above that comes armor, then naval forces, and finally air power at the top. But the United States has flipped this structure. It relies heavily on extremely expensive air power as its foundation. Why? Because of the military-industrial complex. Expensive systems generate massive profits. But this creates a strategic vulnerability. When cheaper technologies like drones can neutralize billion-dollar systems, the entire structure becomes inefficient in a prolonged conflict. Third, asymmetric cost exchange. This is where the numbers become devastating. Iranian drones can cost as little as $50,000. American interceptor missiles cost millions. So every time a drone is intercepted, the US spends exponentially more than Iran.
What do I have today?
Just that therapy appointment for inner child work at 11.
Oh, it's stupid. I hate it. I just want to stay up late and hang out with my friends.
So, keep it?
Yeah. Smart.
Do kids want to grow tall to reach the pros or to reach a Reese's? Some might say that that is an unfair advantage. But I say everything happens for a Reese's.
New Redken Acidic Grow Full System. Break less. See the fullness of up to 5,000 more hair fibers. Redken.
For people with eosinophilic esophagitis or EOE, you can treat your EOE.
What did you get with that?
Multiply that across hundreds of drones, and the financial burden becomes unsustainable. This is not just warfare, it's economic attrition. Iran doesn't need to win quickly. It just needs to make the war too expensive to continue. Fourth, the will to fight. This is perhaps the most underestimated factor. Iran is not just operating as a government, but as a civilization with a deep historical identity. This creates a level of resilience that is very difficult to break. Meanwhile, in the United States, public support for war is limited. Political divisions are deep, and tolerance for casualties is low. This imbalance in willpower plays a critical role in long-term conflicts. Now let's expand the analysis. War today is not just fought on the battlefield. It operates across 4 dimensions: military, economic, political, and narrative. And here's the key difference. The United States is trying to force the economic and political environment to support its military actions. Iran is doing the opposite. It is using military actions to shape economic pressure, political divisions, and global narratives. For example, control over the Strait of Hormuz gives Iran leverage over global oil supply. Even partial disruption can push oil prices dramatically higher, affecting economies worldwide. This creates pressure not just on governments, but on populations and financial systems. At the same time, Iran carefully manages relationships with certain countries, allowing some trade while restricting others. This is strategic, not random. Now let's talk about the bigger system at play, the global financial structure. The US dollar dominates global oil trade, forming what is known as the petrodollar system. This system underpins American economic power. But if control over oil flows becomes uncertain, that system weakens. And if it weakens enough, the financial foundation of American global influence starts to crack. This is how empires decline, not always through direct military defeat, but through economic exhaustion and structural imbalance. We've seen this before. The Soviet Union didn't collapse because of a single battle. It collapsed because the cost of maintaining its system became unsustainable. Now here's the key question. Why doesn't the United States adapt? Why not change strategy or de-escalate? The answer lies in governance and institutional inertia. Large systems don't change easily, especially when economic incentives and political narratives are locked in place. Meanwhile, Iran has spent decades preparing specifically for this type of conflict. studying weaknesses, and building strategies around them. So let me bring this all together. Based on structural history and game theory, the trajectory becomes clearer. This is not about a quick military victory or defeat. It's about sustainability. If the cost of maintaining the conflict continues to rise, economically, politically, and strategically, then eventually a withdrawal becomes inevitable. And when that happens, it won't look like a traditional defeat. It will look like a strategic recalibration. But historically, that's how empires lose. Not in one dramatic moment, but through gradual overextension. The deeper historical truth is this: every empire eventually faces its limits. Rome did. The British Empire did. The Soviet Union did. And now the United States may be approaching its own moment of reckoning. Not because it lacks power, but because the system sustaining that power is under increasing strain. And Iran, historically Persia, continues to follow its long-established pattern. It absorbs pressure, adapts over time, and outlasts external forces. That has been the story for thousands of years. So this is not a prediction in the sense of certainty. This is a framework, an analytical lens based on patterns we've observed repeatedly throughout history. I want you to think about it critically. Compare it with what you're seeing in real time. Because if this framework holds, then what we are witnessing is not just another conflict. It is a major turning point in the global order.